everyone, I'm Rich. So Samsung had recently released their latest flagship laptop, the Galaxy Book 4 Ultra, which comes at a hefty price tag around $2,400 for the base model and $3,000 for the Ultra 9 and RTX 4070 GPU, which I have right here. This is pretty much around the price of a 16-inch MacBook Pro, so I'm interested to see how this compares. For years, Samsung has been head-to-head with Apple in their phones, their laptops, and a myriad of other devices, so I'm interested to see what the top-spec Windows machine has to offer here. I gotta say, it's a really sexy and powerful machine, but I'm not sure if it's quite worth that huge price tag. The Book 4 Ultra is very solidly built. Samsung always takes a very minimal approach to their laptops, all while looking premium. It has the performance to game without looking like a bulky gaming laptop, which is what I and many other users out there may like. It does have a very slight wedge-shaped design that kind of reminds me of the 2020 M1 MacBook Air, but I think it looks more angular here. Samsung only has one color option here, which is in Moonstone Gray, which is something I really like, and the material hardly attracts fingerprints. And this is great for extended use as it keeps the laptop looking pretty in the long term without having to always wipe it down once it gets dirty. The Book 4 Ultra is lightweight, coming in at around 4.1 pounds or 1.9 kilograms, and is relatively thin, stretching up to 16.5 millimeters tall with the screen closed. Handling this around the house feels very nice and soft to the touch, and sliding this in and out of my backpack is really great too. I mean, the corners are very nice and it doesn't feel like it's sharp or jarring anywhere. On the left, you have an HDMI 2.1 plug capable of 8K 60Hz output and two Thunderbolt 4 ports for rapid 40GB data transfers. On the right is a USB-A 3 port, 3.5mm audio jack, and an expandable micro SD card slot for up to 2 terabytes. And I always love that Samsung included this. It's like a nice extra bonus feature to give your laptop a storage boost, all while looking discreet, as it doesn't stick out. It's practically hidden and is perfect for content creators, as many devices are utilizing micro SD cards in cameras, dash cams, and more. Now, my biggest gripe about the Samsung Galaxy Book lineup has got to be the keyboard layout. In my opinion, it has always been awkwardly laid out due to the extra number pad set on the right hand side. I don't use extra keys myself, but if you're someone out there that does, then you may find it useful. Personally, I think it makes the keyboard feel off-centered, that along with the touchpad. It took me quite a bit of time to get used to it. But as you can see right here, I mean, there's more space for my left palm rather than my right, which can sometimes get annoying. The keyboard doesn't flex as much, which is good. It's backlit, which looks nice while working in dark environments. But typing on this feels nimble, not as juicy as I would have hoped as the travel distance is very short. They have a fingerprint sensor that acts as your power button on the top right, and the setup is simple and quick to use. Included is the Windows Copilot key. Now, more or less, Copilot works decent. I'd often rather use ChatGPT instead, but since it's built right here on the laptop, I'll use it every now and then when writing emails or to summarize a block of text. Really though, it's not the fastest, and Copilot is still in its preview mode, so a lot of things need to be ironed out first. To me, this key and just Copilot in general just feels very experimental. I'm not sure how long Copilot will be around. I mean, just judging by, well, if you guys remember Cortana, Microsoft pretty much killed that out last year. But hey, that's not a huge deal breaker because I don't think a lot of people were using Cortana in the first place. The large trackpad is almost the size of my whole hand, so I had no trouble feeling like I ran out of space while scrolling. Now, the overwhelming majority of Windows trackpads, including the Book 4 Ultra, are diving board style, meaning the ability to physically click on them diminishes the higher up you go. You can kind of see it on here. You can't really press in all the time, but once you go down halfway, you can. I wish Samsung would have improved this a little bit better, because at a price tag like this, which potentially goes up against a MacBook Pro, I don't think it's a good experience. I also noticed a slight input lag with a mouse cursor. It almost feels a little bit jelly-like, and in my opinion, just not as responsive as other Windows laptops. As we flip this over to the back, the rubber feet are pretty grippy. There's 4 of them, and it does a pretty good job at resisting pushback. These are also where the screw holes are aligned too. And with a screen as large and as thin as this, the hinge genuinely feels sturdy and the craftsmanship shows. From moving this laptop across a coffee shop to rough handling it, the screen doesn't wobble as much, and I'm glad they got this portion of the laptop right, because I deeply value hinge durability for displays on laptops. Now, with other gaming laptops out there with the same specs like the Ultra 9 185H and the RTX 4070 GPU, why is Samsung charging around $500 to $700 more for this? Well, my guess is that it has to come down to their display, which I believe is their largest selling point here that sets it apart from the others. There aren't many other laptop screens that are going to be as thin and as slim as is this, And Samsung is widely known for making great displays, and it seems like they're trying to build the ultimate screen experience here with an ultra-large, ultra-detailed 16-inch 3K dynamic AMOLED display. Viewing content on here was enjoyable, coupled with their DCI P3 color space. A lot of the colors looked very deep and rich. The Book 4 Ultra also handled local dimming pretty well. Blooming, also referred to as the halo effect, occurs when the light that's illuminating on a small object bleeds into the surrounding dim zones. And we can see here via a backlit test that the white square does a great job keeping that light packed in. This is great in real world usage as movie scenes with dark backgrounds contain the rich blacks and doesn't bleed out to any parts of the screen, and I noticed that right away. The 120Hz smooth refresh rate is always a treat for both gaming and regular browsing. Samsung has been improving their Corning Gorilla Glass for the screens, and it substantially reduces glare. Its anti-reflective cover keeps visuals crisp and legible from all angles, even in bright environments. Couple this with a max peak brightness of around 400 nits and it's not too bad. I can still see the screen comfortably when I'm indoors. They have their Vision Booster Vibrance feature on here, so it constantly adjusts contrast and colors based on lighting conditions for a consistent vibrant image. This is kind of similar to Apple's True Tone technology, I would suppose. But yeah, I actually really prefer the deep and sharp visuals on the Book 4 Ultra. They got some really nice screens. It's very smooth and they've done a great job here. As for editing photos on Adobe Lightroom, the colors seem pretty accurate as well. If you're someone like me that likes photo editing, I'm safe to say that the photos do look true to life with just a slight bump in their vibrancy, which is nice. Now, the display is also rounded at the corners, which gives it a nice look, but I noticed that it also runs over the super thin bezels, as you can see here, so you can kind of hide your mouse over it. Now let's talk about the speakers, right? Samsung's rocking these AKG quad speakers on the bottom side. They stretch pretty far down and feels deep, and I actually feel this part of the laptop most as it's kind of where I pick it up, you know, from like the sides right here. But in terms of the design, I think Samsung's approach was to make this look a little bit more minimal and hidden. You know, sometimes speaker grills on the keyboard base may look a little unattractive, and most of us will come to know of Samsung, you know, trying their best to always look good. They have two 5-watt woofers and two 2-watt speakers, which produce some pretty loud sounds. I would have liked the bass to be a bit more deeper considering the size of this laptop, as it does sound rather flat, but the sound quality is very clear even at max settings, and I didn't hear any titting or crackling. One thing I recommend for everyone to do is to turn on Dolby Atmos through the app itself. I'm not sure why this isn't turned on by default, as many of us may not know about it. It's just a simple click of a button and the sound quality noticeably gets a better jump. And this is when I think the laptop really gets a nice premium finish in the sound quality department. Alright, so let's talk about the performance and gaming. I think this is where it gets interesting. I opted for the Ultra 9 185H and RTX 4070 GPU here, as I didn't think getting the base model Ultra 7 was going to be much different than the Galaxy Book 4 Pro 360, which I reviewed last month. So for starters, Samsung is rocking Intel's completely new Meteor Lake processor built on a new architecture and chip design. It's pretty energy efficient with 16 cores and 22 threads at a base clock of 2.5 GHz, but you can get this up to 5.1 GHz depending on your workload. Included is their integrated ARC graphics GPU coupled with their hefty NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4070 discrete card, which has a combined shared memory of 16 gigabytes of video RAM, which is simply amazing for gaming. This is kind of why I wanted this laptop in the first place, just for the RTX 4070. Let's not forget that you have up to 32 gigs of regular RAM running up to around 70,400 megahertz. And for example, if I was in the middle of gaming, I could easily switch over to my friend's Discord call with the video on, view some Google Chrome tabs that I previously left open, and maybe have another software running in the back. All this without any lag or any hiccups. So it's a monstrous machine indeed, but all of this comes at a cost of a pretty loud fan noise. This thing is loud and it's a little unpleasant at times. As you can hear right here, it's able to fill up the size of a small room, and I was able to hear this from even the room over. I think after half an hour of gaming, I started to really hear the fan noise, and this kind of, you know, once I turned it off and the room was completely silent, I felt a little bit more relieved. Now, Samsung has their own settings, which you can change the power settings to have it optimized, high performance mode, or quiet. When it comes down to gaming and all that, I'm gonna have to turn it to high performance, so I have to squeeze all those extra frame rates, and that's when the PC gets loud. But other than that, I'm gonna keep it optimized or even quiet because I really don't want to be hearing the fan noise all the time. Geekbench 6 scores come in at around 12,998 for all the cores combined. Compare this to Apple's M3 Pro at around 15,000, so it is below them on paper against those chips. The new Meteor Lake CPUs feature their in-house NPU, which stands for Neural Processing Unit, to handle local AI computations. But the part I think is most interesting about this laptop is the gaming performance, and I plugged in my Razer Death Adder White gaming mouse, loaded up my favorite team-based game, The Finals, a free-to-play 3v3 tournament-style first-person shooter developed by Embark Studios. I set everything to epic settings at 3K resolution, essentially just maxing out the settings on here, and I was pleased to see that I'm able to achieve a stable 43 to 45 some frames per second, and it absolutely looks beautiful. When we get down to the fire or any areas that have a lot of action going on, we'll drop down to the mid 30s. On Baldur's Gate 3, all settings were also turned to max, and I was able to achieve an average around 48 frames per second. The detail and sheer amount of content that they packed into this game really pushes the boundaries of laptops and gaming PCs, so I think this was an important game to try out. When cutscenes appeared, the game noticeably jumped to around 50 to 60 frames per second. Another game I like playing is Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, aka TABS. It's a strategy game based on the points of each troop, and the goal is to beat the opposing force. But I think the physics and ragdoll animation in this game was worth showing as well. Depending on how many troops you place down on here, it usually slows down a lot of other machines, but for the Book 4 Ultra, we're averaging around the 80 to 100 frame mark. And lastly is War Thunder. With the movie settings and render resolution set to max, I'm averaging around 81 frames per second, especially here on tanks where the detail on the ground, the trees and foliage require a lot more processing power. The experience here is beautiful. The RTX 4070 reaches to around 79 degrees Celsius, maximum over 2 hours of gaming, and the thermals on the laptop is very well designed. It's a little hard to touch after some time, especially around the WASD keys. And I was surprised here because I didn't really see any clear ventilation on this laptop until I looked behind and saw the huge vents that they had there. That's where the hinge was, and that's where the fan noise is coming out of. But for normal operation, navigating across the UI, opening and closing out of apps felt instantaneous. Editing videos on DaVinci Resolve 18 timelines playback felt super smooth, even while editing 4K clips. Render times came in at around 19 minutes with just a handful of video effects, transitions, and color grades. So I think the main takeaway here is that if you want to run hardcore AAA games and use intense application, whether that be for school, work, or play, this laptop is going to be able to chug through it all easily, but just be ready for this fan noise occasionally. What's neat about the Book 4 Ultra and just any other Samsung Galaxy books in general is their ecosystem and their Samsung apps like Gallery, which has AI-powered features like photo remaster. So if I wanted to remove shadows, reflections, or objects from a picture, it can do so very well. You don't get this with any other laptop brands, and it's good for on-the-fly edits without needing to buy additional software or having to learn anything new. And I use this pretty often. One thing that does kind of bother me is the included pre-installed McAfee antivirus software. Like, man, what? It just screams cheap, like more unnecessary bloatware. I really don't want this popping up on my screen every day, and it actually prevented me from downloading some applications that aren't even harmful at all. As long as you're not downloading anything suspicious off the internet, the tried and true Windows security is absolutely good enough. That and Samsung Knox does a great job already, as it's a physical chip that isolates sensitive data from the rest of your device's operations, like your fingerprints and other hardware level passwords. Just get McAfee out of here. It shouldn't be on this for a laptop this expensive. For the video, we have a full 1080p camera with AI enhanced effects like auto framing, which works surprisingly well to crop out certain parts of your screen to follow you, eye contact that adjusts your eyes to make it always seem like you're staring at the camera, and blur. So these features are nice for video calls, and I can see this working well for business meetings and more. It will definitely make a statement to other people when they see you use this. So if you're like an entrepreneur or a young professional that's on Zoom calls a lot, this is gonna be pretty good for it. Battery life, in my experience, is kind of a toss-up here. On average, I surfed the web, edited a couple photos, and gamed for like 30 minutes, and had lost around 36% after 3 hours of use. This is on optimized mode through the Samsung settings app, by the way. On average, I was able to get around 8 to 12 hours of use here until the laptop died. If you manage your apps and brightness well, I was able to get close to around 13 hours of screen on time. I'm not too confident with how Samsung and Intel's new chipset seems to treat their 76 watt-hour battery here. And as for charging this laptop, I personally like using my AOHi 140 watt GAN charger, as it's substantially smaller than the included brick by Samsung. I mean, this one is huge. Take a look at this. It's a really thick brick, and the power prongs don't even fold either, so it's essentially just sticking out. Come on now. Anyways, getting this charge from 0 to 100 takes around 2 hours and 10 minutes. So overall, I have some mixed feelings about the Book 4 Ultra. On paper, it seems to be doing almost everything right, from their great hardware to their gorgeous display, their build quality. I love their port selection. The overall form factor just feels very nice and premium, but what doesn't feel all that premium has to be their included bloatware, for example, the McAfee antivirus and just a bunch of other apps, the diving board style trackpad, the keyboard layout, and the pretty decently loud fan noise. I've seen a lot of videos on the internet saying how this is like the MacBook Pro killer, and I think that's all clickbait. This is Samsung's flagship laptop, and personally, I just expected more. It's for sure as heck sexy, but it's expensive. I'm sure Samsung has their market for the types of people that would buy this, especially for you Galaxy phone users. The integration and ecosystem is just very nice. File sharing is so quick and easy to use on this. It's a little bit better than AirDrop in my opinion at the current moment. Their Samsung look and Galaxy Book name does set this apart from other manufacturers, and the display is quite literally the best one I've seen yet. If you're willing to drop that much money and can't see yourself getting a MacBook Pro, I mean, this is pretty much it. There's very few options from Dell and Lenovo out there, but hey, with the Galaxy Book 4 Ultra, this is very capable. Anyways, that's all I got for today's video. I might consider doing a day in the life review with this, just to kind of, bring it out of the house and show you what it's like in different settings and different scenarios and kind of how I use it. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below, but hit that like and subscribe button, guys, and until the next one, I'll see ya then.